I spent 20 years as a marketer in very large companies, a credit card company, a healthcare company, McDonald's. And over time, I learned all sorts of marketing channels and how to attract new customers. But I also started to learn about customer experience and how to talk to customers that were already part of the business, that were already spending money with us. And I found that ultimately that focusing on existing customers was a better strategy than constantly trying to acquire new ones. We all know that it's a lot cheaper to keep an existing customer than it is to get a new one. But we've got to spend time on them. We've got to focus on their needs and on delivering and exceeding their expectations. So ultimately, in my career, I moved away from marketing and towards customer experience. But when I went off on my own and started my own company in 2019, I wanted to really sit at the intersection of customer experience and marketing because my belief is that when you create great experiences, your customers do the marketing for you. They talk about you, they tell other people about how great it is to do business with you. And that's the best marketing that there is. So I'm a believer that when customers talk about us in a positive way, it is far more credible than when we talk about ourselves. It's always better for a customer to say, "Hey, Dan's a really great speaker," or "I loved Dan's book," than for me to tell you that, right? Because it just doesn't sound the same. And so I think that customer stories are a great way to show this, but for them to be authentic, we can't ask for them. We've got to have customers that want to talk about us. And to do that, we intentionally create experiences that people want to share. Now, in my research, I found that people are more willing to share positive experiences than negative experiences. But most people, when you ask them, they can't remember the last time they had a really good experience with any company. And so that's the opportunity is that if we can create that positive experience and get people talking about us, then it's incredibly genuine and authentic. And again, really can take the place of a lot of the sales and marketing that we're doing today. But when you ask them, they prefer to share positive experiences. All you have to do is look at Instagram to see that people want to share things that are going well. They want to share the beautiful new clothing that they bought, or the great restaurant, the amazing looking food, or whatever it is. So people want to share positive things, but they sometimes struggle to find them, at least with the companies that they do business with. Another thing I liked about your question is you mentioned customer stories, and I'm a big believer that storytelling is how people like to learn. In fact, that's how I teach when I speak or when I coach. Is I tell stories because everybody likes to be told a story. Everybody likes to hear a story, and it's much more memorable that way because people can relate back to the story that somebody told them. We all remember stories from our childhood that our parents read to us. And in a similar way, even in business, when you tell a good story, it's far more memorable. I think there's two. The first is not listening to your customers. When what I find is that when you ask customers for feedback, you're going to get it. The question is, are you ready to hear it? And feedback is going to come in a lot of forms. It's going to come as compliments and telling you all the things that you're doing really well that people like about your business. And that's really important because if people like it, we should do more of it. They're going to also tell you what they don't like about your business. They're going to give you some complaints. They're going to ask you to fix some things. And if we're able to take that in and really do something about it, we're going to make great strides towards improving the customer experience. But oftentimes companies don't want to hear the complaints, or they think that it's just one customer that's upset about something. And they don't really look for the root cause of why somebody might be complaining or calling customer service or even leaving the business. So I find that complaints can also be incredibly valuable. And so I think not listening to customers is probably number one. Number two would be not being able to view your business through the customer lens. And what I mean by that is that when we sit in our offices, we are looking outward at customers. We're not seeing the view that they're seeing because they're looking inward at us, at our company. Think about a doctor's office or a dentist's office. I did some research, and at least in the United States, most dentists have their office in the back, and they actually have a separate entrance into the building. And the reason they do this is that they don't want to walk through a waiting room with people waiting because they're afraid that those people waiting are going to be upset. But when they walk in the back door every day, they don't ever see what their patients see. So I always recommend to doctors and dentists that at least once a week, walk in through the front door. Because when you do that, you're going to see that nobody's cleaned the front door in a long time, and there's a lot of fingerprints or there's a lot of dust. You're going to see that the magazines that are in the waiting room haven't been updated in 2 years. You're going to see that that the coffee station is out of coffee or that hasn't been cleaned up. If you're always walking in the back door, you never see that stuff. Now, if you're in an e-commerce company and there is no front or back door, the same thing is true. So the way that we deal with it is we go shopping at our own e-commerce company. We put stuff into a cart, we check out, we pay with our credit card, we try to return something, and we go through all of the motions that we make our customers go through. When you do that, you have a much better insight into what the experience is really like. And we are all consumers too, right? We all shop online, we all go out to restaurants. So we all know what it's like to be a consumer. But oftentimes we don't know what it's like to be a consumer of our business. So you're asking a great question. There's a delicate balance between convenience and privacy, or personalization and privacy. I think what's really interesting is that especially younger generations, millennials and Gen Z, are more than willing to give up privacy in order to get personalization. They really want the personalization. And so that's certainly helpful. And we've got to be aware of that. We also have to be aware that older generations may not be willing to make that same trade off. I think one of the ways that we can do both is by looking for trends, looking for what happens when multiple customers get to a certain point. So, for example, if we know that a customer is looking to buy a home, then we probably know that eventually they may need a mortgage. And that's just sort of an obvious next step. And so, if we can be proactive and say, hey, we noticed that you're looking for a home, might we also set you up with a company that can provide you with a mortgage? Now you haven't really lost any privacy, but you've gotten ahead of the experience and created something that is really personalized. The other way I think is to simply ask customers. So I call this self-personalization. A great example here, my legal name is Daniel, but nobody calls me Daniel other than my mother when she's mad at me. So I don't want anybody to call me Daniel. That's why I go by Dan. So if I log into my bank and it says, "Good morning, Daniel," they think that they're being personalized. I think they're being annoying, right? And so we sort of missed something. Well, one of my banks recently said, "What would you like to be called?" And I thought this was a great question. So I wrote in Dan. And guess what? Now, when I log into the website, it says, "Good morning, Dan." So that's what I call self personalization, because I understand why they had Daniel in their system. It is my legal name, it's how I had to sign up for the bank account. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're providing any sort of personalization, and in fact, might be providing the opposite. So when you ask customers things, then they tell you and they personalize their own experience. Other examples of this would be, take a look at anybody's phone and you'll see that no home screen, there are no two home screens on planet Earth that look the same, because we all get to personalize our home screens. We get to choose which apps we want. We get to choose the color background or the photo that's behind. We get to choose where we want the clock to be and if we want the weather report and all that sort of thing. That's all self-personalization. And I think that is definitely something to look at no matter what kind of a business you're in, because by definition, the customer is allowing you is is okay with that balance between privacy and personalization because it is their choice to personalize. But the thing is, they think they're personalizing because they've used your name in an email or in a letter. And that is, the most basic form of personalization. And lots of companies get it wrong because we've all gotten emails, I'm sure you have too, that say dear first name. So that kind of personalization, if that's all you're doing and trying to be personalized, then you're really missing something. It's about getting to know your customer as a human being and get to know their preferences and their interests. When we've had the last few years with the pandemic, we've had so much more virtual interactions. That actually has given us a better chance to get to know people because we see a cat walking around in the background, or we see a baby, or we see something that's on somebody's wall. And now we know something about them. And it's not about being creepy. It's about knowing that, if somebody has a cat, we know that the best way to somebody's heart is either through their kids or their pets, right? And so if we could do something, if somewhere in the experience we could do something for our customer's cat that they don't expect, they're going to love us for it. And so it's just about trying to get to know your customers so that you can personalize in a way that makes sense. Right. And let me give you a similar example because it's still banking. So my father, who is 80, has never used an ATM card. He always walks into the bank. And part of it is because he likes to walk into the bank and they greet him and they say, "Good morning, Mr. Gingiss," and they know who he is. And that's what he likes. My generation, I'm Gen X. I very rarely go into the bank, but I use my ATM card all the time. My kids who are Gen Z, they don't even know what to do with cash. They don't have cash ever. They're only using digital transactions like Zelle or some other platform, Venmo, where they're sending money back and forth between their friends and they're paying with their phones. And so 3 generations, 3 different experiences using the same bank, but people want different things. Yeah, that's a great question. And it is a place where a lot of companies miss is when we get customer feedback, our first instinct is to solve a problem for that customer. And that's a good instinct, right? If we have somebody calling us and they're having a problem, the first thing we should do is fix their problem. But we've got to make sure that we look back at the root cause of their problem and say, why did this person call in the first place? When I worked at a credit card company, we had some estimates that suggested that every person that called, there were 100 people that had the same problem that didn't call. Now, those 100 people are really dangerous because what's happened is they're upset, but they're not even telling us. And those are the people that are most likely going to leave your business eventually if you keep if you keep missing on the experience. And so we would always ask ourselves, why did this person call? After we solved their problem, we said, what in our experience caused them to call? Oh, well, the mobile app wasn't functioning. Okay, we've got to send this feedback now to the mobile app team and hold them accountable for investigating it and fixing it so that we don't get any more phone calls about this particular problem. When I worked at the credit card company, I was in the digital customer experience area and I was running the website. And I worked very closely with the customer service team. And we would have a call type. Let's say people were calling because I don't know, were having trouble redeeming their credit card rewards. So my team would go in and we would fix that experience. And then we would actually create a chart that would show the number of phone calls that people had coming in. The call type was rewards problem. And then we would fix the issue on the website and we would watch as that chart just completely dropped that, it's 100 calls, 100 calls, 100 calls, 2 calls, because we fixed the problem. And so if we didn't have that relationship between the digital team and the customer service team, that problem never gets fixed. And that's really where most companies miss, is that they're not communicating customer issues to the rest of the organization. My suggestion is that the customer service team has regular interactions, regular meetings with the key departments within the company where they review, here's why people are calling, here's the complaints that we're seeing, here's the issues that are coming up. and they agree together on how they're going to get fixed. Sure. It's actually, the acronym is WISE. And then at the end, I kind of surprise people by adding an R at the end to say wiser, because as I like to say, I want to make you wise to customer experience. And then I want to make you wiser than the competition. And so WISER is an acronym that I came up with to teach people how to create the kinds of experiences that people want to talk about. We discussed this earlier, right? We want to create experiences so that our customers are telling stories about how great it is to do business with us. Now, the WISE part stands, the WISE acronym stands for witty, immersive, shareable, and extraordinary. And each of those four things are elements towards creating experiences that people want to talk about. Once we do that and we've got people talking about us, the R is about being responsive. And that's making sure that you are in all the channels that your customers are in, that you're active on social media if people are talking about your brand on social media, and that you're engaging in conversation, because today's consumer wants a relationship with the companies that they do business with. And so that's what Wiser is. It's a lot of fun. Each one of the letters, I have lots of different real life examples in terms of how to execute them at your business. And because I spent so much time in corporate America, I know how difficult it is to get things done. So all of the examples that I share are simple, practical, and inexpensive. I never sit there and tell a story about how, a hotel spent $500,000 to create this great experience, because most companies don't have budget like that laying around for customer experience. We've got to focus on the things that we can do quickly, simply, and inexpensively. So I think that a couple trends that are emerging from the pandemic. The first is around safety. And I think that we all went through a period of time where we didn't feel as safe as we once did. We were worried about being in large groups. We were worried about which locations, did we have a bigger chance of catching this virus? And so I think that safety in all of its forms is a really key component of experience. It's not just about, are we going to catch COVID somewhere? It's physical safety, emotional safety. Do we feel digital safety? Is our data safe? All of these things go into how we choose the types of companies that we do business with. So I think that's definitely one. And as I alluded to before, this idea that customers today want a relationship with companies. We spend our hard-earned money with companies, whether it's a clothing store or a restaurant or whatever it is, and we want to feel that the loyalty goes both ways, that we're loyal to a brand and the brand is loyal right back to us, that they appreciate us, that they know us. And I think that is going to continue to be a real trend in customer experiences. The brands that know me are the ones that I really love, the ones that I want to go back to again and again. My favorite CX metric is customer retention rate. The opposite of customer retention rate is churn rate. So I like to look at the percentage of customers we keep, because I try to be positive about everything. But if you want to look at churn rate, which is how many customers you lose, that's fine as well. The reason I like this metric is because it directly connects to the bottom line of the business. There are so many executives that still think that customer experience is a soft skill, that it's a nice to have and not a must have. But it is just as important as your finance team or your legal team or anything that feels like a hard skill. And the reason is because it has a direct connection to the profitability of a company. So when we look at the percentage of customers that we keep and we know the value of each customer, we can calculate the value of our customer experience program. So that's why I always focus on that one. Other stats like customer satisfaction are great statistics. They tell you how you're doing. They don't necessarily tell you why, and they don't make a direct connection to the bottom line, whereas a retention rate does.